Grand Rising Soul Tribe. We are live and welcome once again to another Galactic update. Now, today, guys, we're going to go into a lot of highly classified information regarding so many operations and projects. So this is all part of the disclosure. I was able to authorize the release of this briefing concerning the designation of what is known as Immaculate Constellation, as well as Project Bluebeam from 1947 all the way to 1969. And of course, we're going to go over the air intelligence reports that took place from the year 1948 to 1953, Project Blue Book, the pictures, and of course, the audio recordings, the Roswell report, source files, and the U.S. Air Force UFO photographs, not to mention the three-letter agency that started with the C, UFO-related records, and modern AARO reports and military UAP imagery. But before I get started with today's presentation, I would first and foremost acknowledge all of you guys. Thank you guys so much for being here once again. Without you guys, I wouldn't have anybody to share this information with. So I am forever grateful for each and every single one of you from the bottom of my heart. Second of all, I have a few announcements. As some of you guys know, my birthday is right around the corner, and every year I always do a birthday special for about 20 individuals. Well, for those that are interested in joining me on a special birthday night, I'm going to have a special presentation on that day. But before I let you guys know what I'm going to be doing on my birthday, I do want to mention that I'm going to keep it only up to 30 individuals. This time I'm going to keep it very small and intimate, because on that day, on the 1st of November, through this webinar, I'm going to be sharing in person, you could say, disclosures about my life in regards to my upcoming book, The Cosmic Origin of Ishmael Perez. This is the story of my life from when I was a little kid all the way to the present. So I've been working on this book now for a little over a year, and I finally finished it. So that book will be released on the 1st of November. And for those that join me, those 30 of you that have this opportunity to join me, I'm going to be going over a few of those chapters in person. And then we're going to be asking, or if you guys want to ask me questions about whatever it is that I shared regarding those chapters, we're going to go into detail about that. So that's going to be believe a 2-hour presentation, and that's going to be fascinating. Okay, so that is now up through my website, or cosmicorigin.com, and I am charging $200 because I'm planning on taking the whole month of November off from teaching courses. So in the month of November, I'm going to be taking time out for spiritual reflection, meditation, and grounding. So I need that month in order to, of course, get in touch and stay grounded with who I am as well, so that I could access more levels of information. So that month, I'm going to take off. No classes during the month of October. The next batch of classes are going to begin in 2 weeks. And that is 3 different level ascension courses. Again, my classes are very inexpensive, only $100. I have Ascension Basics for those that are barely getting their feet wet and want to understand the transition from the 3D into the 5D. And also for those that want to master mindfulness, being in the present moment, cultivating the internal self, which leads to self-realization and enlightenment. And for those of you guys that want to learn how to quantum navigate and access the quantum fields, there is Ascension 2.0. And then for those of you guys that want to learn how to embody the cosmic self, there will be Ascension 3.0. And then, of course, my groundbreaking class, where I break down the entire cosmic infrastructure, disclosing cosmic history going back to 998 billion years ago. Then there is our cosmic origin. And at the end of that class, our cosmic origin, you get your starseed origin reading. You get to find out exactly where your soul originated in our universe. And in addition to that, I want to remind you guys that my August 29th event is next weekend. And in that event, not only am I going to share some personal detail information regarding the history of Andromeda. I'm going to go over the details of the War of the Elohim, which I couldn't cover in my class or Cosmic Origin. But I'm also going to be revealing for the first time what a Type 3 mega civilization is. And this is information pertaining to a book that I'm not going to release until next January of 2027. And again, for those that make it, I am going to be sharing 2 chapters of my autobiography book that is going to be released on the 1st of November. So I'm also going to go over 2 chapters. I'm going to be reading 2 chapters to you guys. So that's going to be a special August 29th broadcasting from the Great Grand Canyon. All right, that's coming up next Saturday at 11 a.m. PST. That is only $60 because, again, I want to make it affordable for as many of you guys as possible. So that link is still up for grab, but bear in mind that as of this Wednesday, that link is going to close. Okay, so you only have 4 days to make sure that you guys access the August Grand Canyon Zoom stream for only $60. And then finally, but not least, in order to end this year with a proper meditation and setting the intention, I'm going to be holding a collective intention on the 30th of October from 6 p.m. PST to 8 p.m. PST. And this is going to be focusing on intention, manifestation, so that we could wrap up 2026 with positive direction. And this is going to be accessible to anyone, okay? That ticket price has been intentionally kept low. So that one's only $40, okay? I want as many of you guys to attend. So that's going to be only $40 so that as many people as possible can participate. Now, the purpose of holding this collective intention on the 30th of October is that between now and then, through your comments, okay, I want you guys to leave comments as to what you want your intention to be if you are going to participate for that collective intention on the 30th of October, okay? So if you are going to partake for only $40, I want you guys to write down your intention, and I'm going to go over it, okay? So this is where we get to encourage all of you to post your intentions primarily in the Saturday Lives comments so that my team can collect all of those intentions. And eventually on the 30th, we're going to be going every intention that you guys wanted me to go over, okay? Not to mention, I'm also going to be doing a book review of my upcoming book regarding, of course, a couple of chapters of the Cosmic Origin autobiography of Ishmael Perez. So that meditation is only going to be $40. And again, I want you guys to give me your intentions. Write it in the comments if you're going to participate. And we're going to go over every single intention, whoever is participating, okay? So those are the announcements that I have for you guys. And I'm doing this because I am not going to be teaching any courses throughout the month of November. So if you guys want to take a course, make sure you guys do it in October. I'm taking the whole month of November off so that I could go on a spiritual journey for myself, okay? So November is going to be all about me having that clear space so that I could extend my spiritual journey. All right. Finally, but not least, guys, there is this amazing holistic way of detoxing the nanotechnology, the graphene oxide, the negative radiation, and that is called Folium. Now, a lot of my students, and of course, some of you that have already been taking this, are writing me emails about how good you feel after taking it for a month or two. So that formula is science-backed, and it is designed to eliminate all the heavy metals in your body, including the negative radiation coming from Wi-Fi, 5G towers, ELF waves, the list goes on, RF frequencies from our cell phones. You guys know what I mean, right? So that, again, the natural healing process of the body takes effect. And we do have 2 new products. So one of them is called Folium AX. Folium AX is new. And Folium DX. Those are new products. DX, D stands for diabetes. A stands for autism. The links are in the description, but I do have to say, disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, but I do believe in the natural way of doing things, okay? So I guess I don't have any other announcements. We're going to get right into it, guys. Project Immaculate Constellation. And what does this mean? All right, guys, this is coming from Cosmic Level Clearance, Jupiter Command, Alliance Intelligence Division. Subject matter, UAP Intelligence Architecture, Compartmentalized Programs and Disclosure. Status, it's currently active. So, Galactic Alliance Intelligence has authorized the releasing of these briefing concerning the designation of what is known as Immaculate Constellation. In the public UAP discussion, Immaculate Constellation has been described and presented to Congress as a highly compartmentalized U.S. government program associated with the collection and handling of intelligence concerning unidentified anomalous phenomena. The existence, scope, structure, and activities attributed to such a program remain highly classified. For the purpose of Immaculate Constellation, represents something considerably larger. According to the archives contained within the Jupiter Command, the designation refers not to a single program, but to an intelligence architecture designed to collect, compartmentalize, analyze, and control information concerning advanced unidentified craft operating within the Earth's atmosphere and near the Earth's space. The ultimate significance would therefore not be the existence of another secret project. It would be what the project knows. So the constellation architecture of Immaculate Constellation, within this context, the term constellation refers to a network rather than a single facility. And what that means is that there are different branches of military intelligence, aerospace surveillance, satellite reconnaissance, signals intelligence, and even specialized recovery teams that each possesses only fragments of the larger picture. One compartment might analyze unusual radar signatures, for example. Another might examine satellite imagery. Another department might investigate encounters involving military aircraft. And then another department could study the materials recovered from anomalous aerospace incidents. And then another one might even attempt to determine the origin and propulsion characteristics of vehicles exhibiting performance beyond conventional aerospace systems. Very few individuals would possess access to the complete intelligence picture unless, however, they are part of a shadow government program. This compartmentalization would create what the Galactic Alliance describe as a constellation of information. Thousands of individual observations that appear unrelated until viewed from a sufficiently high-level clearance, and when connected, the points begin forming a pattern. So this is the central question that most people would have at this time. Are unidentified objects entering the Earth's aerospace? Well, yeah, and they have been for thousands of years, not just since 1947, right? So the deeper question would be, who is operating them? Well, according to the Galactic Alliance, they have concluded that the phenomena cannot just be explained by a single origin. You see, guys, instead, unidentified craft would fall into several broad categories: experimental human aerospace platforms, misunderstood conventional objects, and of course, genuinely unexplained phenomena regarding vehicles associated with advanced civilizations beyond contemporary human society. So the distinction would become very critical. Not every unidentified craft would be extraterrestrial. Not every unusual light would represent advanced technology, and not every classified aerospace project would have anything to do with non-human intelligence. The intelligence challenge would therefore involve separating ordinary anomalies from true extraordinary cases. Oh, thank you. Which leads to the galactic layer. Appreciate the eyes, thank you. Which leads to the galactic layer. According to Galactic Alliance archives, they describe the Earth as an existing within a heavily traveled region of interstellar space. According to this report, multiple advanced civilizations have observed humanity throughout different periods of its development. Some would operate under strict non-intervention agreements pertaining to, of course, interstellar peaceful organizations such as federations or alliances, while others would maintain limited diplomatic or even scientific contact with authorized human representatives. And of course, we had the third category, right, referring to the negative extraterrestrial groups. They do what they want. They violate galactic protocols. So within this context, the Galactic Alliance considers the Earth a developing civilization approaching what they call a contact threshold. Now, what is a contact threshold? Well, the point at which a planetary society becomes technologically and psychologically capable of recognizing that they are not alone in the universe, that intelligent life exists beyond our world. That's what that means. So the rapid expansion of human satellite networks, the infrared surveillance, the radar systems, including the civilian cameras. How many times do we see it on social media that people are capturing flying objects or unexplained anomalies in the sky, right? Including commercial space flight. All that, guys, is making permanent secrecy increasingly difficult to hold. So now humanity would essentially be constructing its own planetary detection grid, and eventually the sky would become impossible to censor. So why immaculate conception, why immaculate constellation would matter? Well, from a Galactic Alliance perspective, immaculate constellation would represent an important transitional mechanism between the era of secrecy and the era of disclosure. We all know that for decades, information concerning anomalous craft was very hidden through compartmentalization because only governments possess the sophisticated detection systems. Well, let's just be real. Only the secret government, right? There are two forms of government. You have the surface government, which is Congress, the Senate, the House of Representatives, and then you have the shadow government, which operates beyond them. So the environment has changed now. Commercial satellites have now observed that the Earth has these anomalous, objects flying all the time, including private companies that are beginning to operate advanced sensors are noticing that. How do you explain these things? And not to mention, guys, millions of people are carrying high-resolution cameras that are continuously capturing craft, UFOs. Independent researchers are analyzing publicly available information. In other words, the monopoly on observation is disappearing. Therefore, disclosure would no longer depend entirely upon someone opening a classified archive anymore, because technology itself would gradually force transparency, which leads to the subject matter of Space Force and the expanding domain. The establishment and growth of the United States Space Force is marking an important evolutionary stage in humanity's relationship with space. Publicly, Space Force is responsible for protecting U.S. interest in space and operating capabilities such as missile warnings, satellite communications, navigations, and even space domain awareness. Well, within the perspective of the Jupiter Command Archives, The emergence of dedicated space defense organizations are also preparing humanity for a future in which the operational environment extends beyond the Earth's orbit. So, what this means is that the transition would occur gradually, and it's already happening. The air defense is becoming aerospace defense. Aerospace defense is becoming space domain awareness. And space domain awareness is becoming interplanetary awareness. And then eventually, interplanetary awareness becomes galactic awareness. See, it's a step-by-step process here, guys. Okay? So, human civilization would begin thinking of itself not simply as nations occupying Earth, but as a planetary civilization entering a much larger interstellar neighborhood. So, as per the Galactics, we have reached what they call the disclosure threshold. Galactic Alliance intelligence identifies disclosure as a sequence instead of just a single announcement. First comes acknowledgement of unexplained objects. Then acknowledged that some demonstrate unusual characteristics. Then comes greater transparency regarding sensor information and historical encounters. And then comes the question that humanity has been approaching for generations. Are we alone? Well, with this unfolding scenario, the answer preserved within the highest alliance archives is unequivocally, the answer is no, we're not alone in the universe. So Earth would be one civilization among countless intelligent societies distributed throughout the galaxy and beyond. But disclosure would involve more than just learning that extraterrestrial civilizations exist. Humanity would also have to reconsider its history, its technology, its philosophy, spirituality, and understanding of consciousness. And this is why contact would represent a civilization level event. So, Immaculate Constellation and the Great Reveal. The Jupiter Command Assessment therefore views Immaculate Constellation as a symbolic bridge between two eras. The first era was defined by compartmentalization by the shadow government. Well, now the shadow government is being dismantled by the Earth Alliance. So the second will be defined by the integration of Tier 2 breakaway groups created by the shadow government with the surface dwellers, which is us. So that means that information that was once separated between military witnesses, intelligence agencies, scientists, aerospace contractors, civilian researchers, and even ordinary observers will increasingly converge. And when enough pieces of the puzzle become visible simultaneously, the larger picture becomes impossible to dismiss. And this is the deeper meaning of the word constellation. One star alone reveals very little. To give you guys an analogy. But when you begin to connect enough stars, there is a recognizable pattern that is emerging. So too with disclosure, okay? Individual sightings may be debated. Individual documents may be challenged. Individual witnesses may be questioned. But when independent streams of evidence converge, humanity begins asking an entirely different question. And that is that we want to know the truth. Okay? And what does this mean? All right, so Immaculate Constellation is assessed within this briefing as a precursor to a much larger transformation in human awareness. You see, guys, the skies are becoming increasingly observable. Space is becoming increasingly accessible. Information is becoming increasingly difficult to compartmentalize. And humanity is beginning to look beyond the boundaries of the earth with new perception. And a lot of that has to do with the Great Awakening. So, the greatest disclosure may therefore not come from one single government document or one whistleblower or one extraordinary encounter. The greatest disclosure will come when humanity collectively begins to reach out to the point where the evidence, the technology, and consciousness of an emerging spacefaring civilization finally converge, which leads to full disclosure. All right. The Jupiter Command has stated that we are witnessing the end of compartmentalization, or the era of compartmentalization, which is what separated breakaway spacefaring groups, private, right, humans that have gone off-world since the 50s. They've gone galactic without us. And, of course, surface dwellers, which is what we are here. Okay, so according to the Jupiter Command Intelligence Archives, humanity is approaching the end of an era in which revolutionary technologies will not remain hidden anymore because of compartmentalization and the shadow government. Okay, within this unfolding, some of these covert organizations that spent decades studying technologies obtained through encounters with advanced non-human civilizations, and then through reverse engineering were able to develop their own spacecraft. Well, all of these projects operated separately from ordinary military research, and in most cases beyond the knowledge of elected, or let's just say selected, governments themselves. Okay? So the objective was to understand the physics, the science behind these advanced technologies without the awareness of the surface government or the public. And for those of you guys that have been studying this for quite some time, we know that within the private sector, there was a major advancement in propulsion systems, energy generation, advanced materials, right? Gravitational manipulation, field propulsion, quantum communication, advanced medical applications, artificial intelligence, environmental advanced restoration initiatives, and technologies capable of radically transforming transportation and humanity's access to space, all withheld from us, the surface dwellers, until now. Well, the Earth Alliance and the Galactic Alliance have now determined that the era, can I get more water, please? Oh, you did. Thank you. There it is. That the era of privately controlling these discoveries must come to an end. The technology was never meant to remain hidden, okay, and only inherited by a small group. That technology was meant for the people. So it is intended to become part of humanity's inheritance, okay, as we become part of a spacefaring society. So according to this briefing, the dismantling of the old network, which is a systematic dismantling operation that has been underway against all these organizations that refuse to transfer advanced technology research into the accountable structures, okay? And this does not mean destroying the technology. Quite the opposite. The objective here is to preserve the research while dismantling the secrecy surrounding it. So, since the 1950s, we know that facilities were deliberately, right, being inventoried, right? They were just kept to themselves. We also knew that archives were being consolidated within the private sector. We also know that scientific databases were being secured within the private sector. And we also know that specialized personnel were being reassigned and taken off world. And then they were told to sign an NDA that they couldn't disclose what they were doing off world this whole time. And so all of those technologies that were previously divided among competing compartments, right? Immaculate constellation, they're all being brought into a larger technological transition program right now as I speak. And this is all happening from behind the scenes, guys. They are preparing us for the space age. So, directives coming from the Galactic Alliance distinguish between scientists who participated simply because their work was classified and individuals who used secrecy to maintain unauthorized control over the discoveries with civilization changing implications. The scientists, the engineers, the technicians, and even the researchers represent valuable human knowledge, and they were all silenced. Okay. Well, the system of permanent secrecy is what must disappear now as the Earth is approaching a critical threshold. It is believed that now humanity is in a position to inherit all of these wonderful technologies. The Jupiter Command describes the next stage as the Human Technological Inheritance Protocol. And the central principle here of the Human Technological Inheritance Protocol is that technology capable of improving civilization cannot remain indefinitely imprisoned or hidden within secret compartments anymore. Okay? Per the Galactics, guys, many technologies associated with advanced aerospace research could eventually and have and will continue to have civilian applications. Advanced energy systems will transform electrical infrastructures. New propulsion principles will revolutionize transportation. Materials originally developed for extreme aerospace environments will produce stronger and lighter structures. Advanced medical technologies will improve diagnostics, regenerative medicine, and our understanding of the human body. Environmental technologies will assist with water purification, taking water from our oceans, which is 80% of the planet, and purifying it so that we could have endless water supply. Pollution will be erased, reduced to zero. Agriculture will be able to reproduce organic real foods at a scale that hasn't been done in a long time. And most importantly, guys, the ability to restore our ecosystem, because our planet right now is dying. Okay, we've depleted our resources for quite some time. So, all of these technologies, per the Galactics, are intended to be inherited by us. Okay, and last but not least, the advanced propulsion systems that will reduce the cost and difficulty of traveling beyond the Earth will also be available. And so the purpose of disclosure would therefore extend far beyond revealing unusual objects in the sky. Disclosure is going to become a technological liberation. And this is going to lead to the Earth entering the space age, 2030, 2028, 2030, give or take. So, according to the Galactic Report, they describe humanity as standing at a threshold between two civilizations. The civilization behind us was predominantly planetary. The civilization ahead of us will increasingly become spacefaring. So what that means is that humanity has already began establishing the infrastructure required for this transition. Reusable launch vehicles, commercial spaceflight, orbital laboratories, lunar programs, advanced robotics, satellite constellations, and increasingly sophisticated space surveillance system. And all this is already being implemented through Space Force. So the release of previously compartmentalized technologies accelerates this process dramatically. Now the moon will become more accessible, okay? Permanent orbital infrastructures will expand. Mars and the asteroid belt will become reachable destinations once again. And eventually, humanity will begin constructing vehicles capable of traveling throughout the solar system without depending exclusively upon conventional chemical propulsions. So at that moment, Earth will cease to think of itself just as a planet divided into nations. No, humanity will begin becoming a solar system civilization. So this leads to the next topic, which is the disclosure deadline. The disclosure deadline. All right, so the most sensitive element of this intelligent report concerns what the Jupiter Command identifies as the disclosure deadline. What is the disclosure deadline? Well, according to the Galactics, the governments possessing significant classified information concerning UAPs, unconventional aerospace technology, and even non-human encounters have been placed under a coordinated timetable. All right, so they do have a deadline to release everything to the public. All right. Now, at the same time, they're not expected to release everything simultaneously. Okay. But they are expected to continue, right, to release information every 3 to 4 weeks. And they have been. Okay. So, Alliance strategists concluded that an uncontrolled release of decades of classified materials could create confusion, overwhelm a lot of people, right? Expose legitimate national security capabilities and make it difficult for the public to distinguish the evidence from speculation. So instead, disclosure is described as a progressive declassification of classified information. So under this protocol, governments worldwide are expected to continually increase transparency by releasing additional materials in stages. And this includes historical records, officially acknowledged footage, sensor information, where security considerations permit, witness testimony, investigative reports, and even eventually increasingly sensitive scientific information. So, Alliance observers believe that the governments are being encouraged by the Galactics to maintain public momentum through a continued disclosure rhythm, which means that approximately every 3 to 4 weeks, another layer of information will continue to be released to the public. Every 3 to 4 weeks, guys, they're declassifying more data, okay? And what this means is that one drop might include footage, real footage that was kept hidden. Another drop might involve historical documents that pertain all the way back to Roswell. Another one could involve witness testimonies. Another one could involve radar or sensor information that was, of course, classified. And even another one might even involve previously classified investigations. So the purpose of all of this is to produce you could say, a revelation every month until everything is out. And the purpose would be to prevent the subject from disappearing again. Each release will establish a new baseline of public awareness, another piece to introduce, then another one, so that the psychological effect is cumulative. And what once seemed to be extraordinary will now gradually become discussable. So what becomes discussable eventually becomes investigatable. And what becomes openly investigated can eventually become publicly acknowledged. So, the Jupiter command refers to this strategy as controlled normalization so that we can have a smooth and steady transition. The objective is not to frighten humanity, because let's be real, guys, not everyone on this planet is ready to know the truth about everything. So they have to do it, gradually. So it is to expand humanity's conception of reality without destabilizing our civilization, without causing mass panic. And that is the reason why Galactic Alliance or Federation fleets cannot just openly land on the White House. You know how many times people ask me, why can't the Galactics just land on the White House? It would destabilize society for the most part, right? And then, of course, the religious people would want to worship them as gods. Think about that. So they have to do it in steps in order to acclimate society, okay? So I want you guys to think of disclosure as a staircase, okay? The first step is unidentified objects exist. And we know that, okay? But not 98% of the population. The second step is that some incidents remain unexplained after investigation, which explains the non-terrestrial phenomena. The third is that some demonstrate characteristics worthy of serious scientific study. And the fourth step is that governments have accumulated considerably more information than was historically acknowledged. So the later steps eventually address the much larger possibility of advanced non-human intelligence. Each step prepares our civilization for the next. So the greatest transformation will occur when all of these subjects leave the domain of secrecy and enter mainstream scientific investigation. At which point, all the universities, which will by then be reformed, right, as they are now controlled by the Rockefeller Jesuits, all the universities will begin to study unconventional propulsions, free energy, interdimensional physics. Physicists could then openly investigate anomalous aerospace phenomena. Engineers will examine previously inaccessible materials, and astronomers will coordinate with defense and civilian sensor networks. And even medical researchers will investigate biological implications of extreme environments and future space travel. So at that point, all of the world's brightest minds will no longer need extraordinary security clearance just to ask extraordinary questions, okay? At that point, the transition would represent one of the most important consequences of disclosure. Knowledge will move from the classified laboratory, right? We have the secret scientists that are like 900 years ahead of our surface dweller scientists. So knowledge will move from the classified department into a civilization itself. And the Galactic Alliance does maintain one fundamental requirement in all of this, and that is that humanity must ultimately develop and govern its own civilization. And what that means is that advanced civilizations cannot simply arrive and build Earth's future for us. Humanity must participate in the process. And this is why technological disclosure is portrayed as an inheritance rather than a rescue. The discoveries would still require human scientists, human engineers, human institutions, human ethical standards, human oversight, and international cooperation. So the purpose of the Galactic Alliance would not be to replace humanity's civilization. It would be to ensure that humanity receives the opportunity to build the next civilization itself. All right, so the dismantling of the secrecy architecture surrounding advanced technology represents far more than the conclusion of an intelligence operation. It represents the beginning of a planetary technological transition. Because humanity is approaching an era in which space will increasingly become an extension of our civilization rather than a distant frontier, the disclosure process therefore serves two purposes simultaneously. The first one is revelation, the great reveal. So first comes revelation. This is where humanity begins to learn all of the information that has been hidden from them for thousands of years, what remains genuinely unexplained, and what technologies may exist beyond conventional understanding. So after the revelation, the great reveal, comes the inheritance. The inheritance. Now, the inheritance is when knowledge moves from compartmentalized organizations towards legitimate scientific institutions and eventually toward technologies capable of benefiting our civilization. So the 3 to 4 week disclosure drop is therefore presented within this unfolding as a countdown, not necessarily towards one dramatic announcement, but towards the gradual collapse of permanent secrecy. Every document opens another door. Every piece of footage released to the public raises another question. Every hearing expands the conversation. Every declassification moves the boundaries until eventually, of course, humanity realizes that disclosure was never simply about discovering who is visiting the Earth. It was always about preparing the Earth to finally join the space age. All right, so this next segment of the presentation comes from Classification Cosmic Command, Jupiter Command, Disclosure Archive, subject publicly released UFO UAP records, non-human intelligence and extraterrestrial species. Date of assessment, August 22nd, 2022. And by the way, today is August 2nd, 2022. Status, disclosure sequence active. So I forgot to mention today's the 22nd of August, 2026. And you know what, my friends, we're still on a positive timeline trajectory. All right, so the first revelation is that there is no single UFO file waiting to be opened. Also, the United States has already released an enormous documentary trail involving UFOs and UAPs. Air Force investigations, intelligence reports, photographs, films, radar-related reports, presidential library records, Roswell investigations, congregational testimonies, AARO case files, modern military videos, and thousands of pages distributed across different agencies. The National Archives now identifies the UFO UAP holdings from the Air Force, the 3-letter agency that starts with the C, the 4-letter agency that starts with an N, NASA, I'll just say NASA, and the FAA, Office of the Secretary of Defense, and numerous other government collections as well. And among the major historical collections are case files from Project Blue Book that took place from the year 1947 to 1969, air intelligence reports that took place from the year 1948 to 1953, Project Blue Book artifacts that took place from 1952 to 1969. Project Blue Book motion pictures that took place from 1950 to 1966. Project Blue Book audio recordings that took place from 1953 to 1967. Roswell Report source files from 1987 to 1996. And Roswell moving images and audio research materials. Not to mention, U.S. Air Force UFO photographs are also intended to be released. And the three-letter agency that starts with the C, UFO-related records. And even modern AARO reports, AARO reports, and military UAP imagery. So let's start with Project Blue Book. Because Project Blue Book itself has been declassified and transferred to the National Archives, by the way. The disclosure story apparently has been developing for generations through Project Blue Book. And one of the most significant developments is the creation of Record Group 615-Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Records Collection. Congress required federal agencies to identify records related to UAPs for eventual public disclosure and transfer to the National Archives. The statutory definition is unusually broad because it encompasses government records relating to unidentified anomalous phenomena, technologies of unknown origin, and non-human intelligences. Well, that language is significant because non-human intelligence is no longer just terminology used by UFO researchers. It now exists within the legal architecture governing the federal UAP records collection. Now, that does not mean that Congress has established that extraterrestrials exist. What that means is that records using those concepts are supposed to be captured by the archival process. So federal agencies were instructed to transfer public releasable records with NARA requesting rolling transfers rather than agencies waiting until the deadline. And that process is continuing. As of 2026, the NARA states that Record Group 615 will continue to be updated as additional federal UAP records arrive. Project Blue Book remains the foundation of the historical American UFO archive. The Air Force collected and investigated thousands of reports involving unusual objects in American skies. The files include witness statements, military investigations, photographs, correspondence, and cases that investigators cannot conclusively identify. But there is an important distinction. The official Air Force conclusion was not that unexplained Blue Book cases represented extraterrestrial spacecraft. Therefore, unidentified extraterrestrials, an unresolved observation tells us that investigators did not confidently determine what something was. It does not, by itself, tell us where it came from. The principle needs to remain central throughout the disclosure process. The Roswell controversy also produced an extensive documentary record. The National Archives maintain that Roswell report sources files, the recordings, and even the research material produced during later Air Force investigations. The official Air Force position attributed the original debris to Project Mogul and offered conventional explanations for later stories concerning bodies. These conclusions remain disputed within the UFO culture, but no authenticated public Roswell document released thus far has established an extraterrestrial species recovered at Roswell according to these records. However, based on what the organization known as MJ12 has been hiding, it turns out that yes, they have established contact with many extraterrestrials. You see the difference between the shadow government and the surface government? So the difference between what a document records and what a document proves becomes increasingly important when we reached an alien race documentation. So there is this thing called the photograph archive. The photograph archive. The government archive also contains historical photographs explicitly cataloging under descriptions the unidentified flying objects and the scientific study of UFOs. The National Archives identifies multiple Air Force UFO photographs within record group 342 in the National Archives. Again, their archival existence confirms that government agencies collected and examined UFO-related materials and kept it a secret. So, this leads to the modern UAP era. So the terminology eventually changed from UFO to UAP. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but now they're calling it UAPs. Before they used to call it UFOs. Well, the modern investigative framework increasingly concentrates on multi-sensor information, military encounters, aviation safety, intelligence collection, and even possible technological surprise. According to AARO, the ARROW now publishes official UAP case imagery and case information. And by 2026, the public archive had expanded considerably. So AARO's current reporting database, they call themselves ARROW, AARO, covers cases extending through June 15, 2026. Its public morphology statistics include reports describing orbs or spheres, lights that are cylinder, lights that are oval, triangular ships, and of course, polygons, ships that are like squares. Okay, so all of these are within the archives, and this is what they've uncovered. And as well as TICTOCs, TIC-TAC, tic-tac forms, right? Triangular spacecraft, and vector boomerang forms as well. Okay, well, let's go over the orbs. Okay, orbs. Orbs are round objects and spheres that represent the largest morphological category among the reports containing shape information in the ARROW's published statistics. But the same database provides another important reality check. Among cases, ARROW, AARO, says it has resolved large numbers have ultimately been attributed to non-terrestrials. So the orbs are related to non-terrestrials. So those aren't government spacecraft. Those are real extraterrestrials, okay? The orbs. So let's continue. 2026 releases so far. The Disclosure Archives is still expanding. ARROW's official public materials now show additional case documents and imagery that was released this year in 2026. I have no more water, please. Can I have some? Thank you. Its public release table lists mission reports associated with incidents in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, Iran, Syria, and the Gulf of Aden, among other locations. More strikingly, ARROW's August 7, 2026 release describes footage supplied by U.S. Central Command involving observations characterized in an accompanying intelligence report as approximately 4-foot cold orbs. 4-foot cold orbs. ARROW carefully notes that the publicly released footage was a secondary recording of an infrared display, limiting its fidelity. Other 2026 imagery includes infrared recordings supplied by Army and Indo-Pacific command sources. The releases are important because the public is increasingly being given actual case materials rather than just being told that cases exist. Thank you. So let's go over the Aero official UAP imagery and the releases this far. The 2025 UAP report, the documentary trail has continued into the current disclosure cycle. Aero's congressional archives now list the fiscal year 2025 consolidated annual report on unidentified anomalous phenomena, and they added July 20th, 2026, right? And that's when they started releasing it to the public. So this is important for our larger series here because disclosure is not confined to historical documents from the 1950s. There is now an institutional reporting mechanism producing continuing UAP documentation for Congress and the public, which leads to the alien race documentation. The alien race documentation. So this is where the disclosure research becomes considerably more complicated. For decades, classified documents, contact accounts, witness testimonies, and even UFO literature have described beings commonly called the Greys, the tall Greys, the Nordics, the tall Whites, the Reptilians, the Mantids, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Sirians, Andromedans, Orion groups, and feline beings, just to name a few, and numerous others. So if you guys want to know about more of these species, I would recommend that you watch last Saturday's Galactic report. I gave over 15 species, including the oceanic giants. Okay, so after reviewing the major public government repositories, the critical conclusion remains that does not prove, the critical conclusion remains that proves that these beings do exist and that they have been working with shadow government groups for quite a long time, with the exception of the benevolent ones, of course, because we know that the benevolent ones, like the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, Orions, and the felines, have been working with the Earth Alliance, right? All right, so the distinction gives us three different levels of material. Level one is what they call the authenticated government record. We know the documents, the footage, and all of the reports are genuine, all right? And this is what the shadow government has been hiding from us. Level two is authenticated records containing an unverified claim. And then level three is contactee, whistleblower, and of course, metaphysical materials. Well, claims about specific extraterrestrial civilizations do exist, right? And they have not been represented, or at least they have not been acknowledged by the established governments. They have only been acknowledged by independent, authenticated programs. Well, that classification system prevents us from mixing genuine declassified records with documents whose origins or claims apparently remain disputed. Okay. And a lot of this has to do with an organization known as Majestic 12. Who was Majestic 12? Well, contrary to what many people believe, that it was Eisenhower that established MJ12, it was established by Truman. In fact, it was Eisenhower that wanted to invade Area 51, but the Majestic 12 wouldn't allow it. Okay. So it is believed that the authentication problem is tightly related to the Majestic 12. Okay. So the mere appearance of extraordinary material in an FBI, CIA, or National Archives have been withheld from Congress for over 80 years because of what Truman established, the Majestic 12. So the Majestic 12 was the one that was in charge of compartmentalization, the one that was in charge of hiding every crash craft and then blaming it on a balloon, all right, for over 80 years. It was the Majestic 12. So it is believed And it was brought to my attention per Commander Valiant Thor that the reason why the disclosure is happening now in 2026 is because Majestic 12 was dismantled in 2017, 16, right around there. Okay. So the Majestic 12 are no longer an issue, thank God. So let's continue. For over 80 years, intelligence agencies preserve materials for many reasons. The materials that they received through retrievals, reverse engineer programs, all of the investigations regarding these exotic technologies, they were all analyzed and put away in secret for many, many years. Okay. So what is happening now is that we are now reaching a new threshold where all of these programs are being dismantled as I speak. Okay. And this is the reason why the Trump administration has been tasked to release and drop information every 3 to 4 weeks because of the fact that Majestic 12 is no longer an organization. All right, let's talk about the CIA remote viewing files. The CIA remote viewing files. Another category involves the CIA's enormous collection of materials associated with remote viewing and the Stargate program, as well as the grill flame era. The CIA reading room contains declassified reports documenting government-sponsored remote viewing experiments. One release grill flame document, for example, explicitly describes a remote viewing training session and records the viewer's impressions while also noting that the larger impressions showed the exact correlation to the intended target. Well, this demonstrates why context is essential. A declassified psychic session transcript records what a participant reported experiencing. The same caution applies when remote viewing files contain extraordinary descriptions of Mars, the structures of Mars, and beings that were located off-world, right? Through Project Stargate, they used remote viewers to actually see what's going on in space. And again, this is all coming out, guys. This is all part of disclosure, right? Project Stargate. And all of these anomalous objects and artifacts and monuments that these remote viewers through the CIA program was able to detect. So, after separating documentations from interpretations, several conclusions survive scrutiny. The U.S. government has investigated the UFOs and UAPs for decades. That is established. Military personnels have reported unidentified objects. That is established. Government censors have captured imagery of objects initially classified as unidentified. That has been established. And some cases remain unresolved. That also has been established. So now Congress has concluded the public hearings on UAPs, and that has been established. The federal government has created a dedicated archival collection of records relating to UAPs, technologies of unknown origin, and of course, non-human intelligence, and of course, additional records that continue to enter the public domain. All of that has been established. So, another thing that has been established is the classification of many extraterrestrial races that have been officially authenticated through publicly released government documentation. That has also been established. Again, I don't know if you guys are paying close attention to what they're releasing every 3 to 4 weeks, but they are releasing new and new documents, okay? The final boundary is extremely important here, guys. From the perspective of the Jupiter Command Archives, Humanity is progressing through successive layers of disclosure. Phase one is the phenomena remains culturally marginalized. This is what they call the denial phase. Unfortunately, some people that are unawake are classifying all of this stuff as demonic. Okay, that's phase one. People are going through a denial phase. Phase two, the acknowledgement. That is when government agencies admit that military personnel encounters genuinely unidentified phenomena. And then phase three is the data release, which is what's been happening since July. Excuse me. Videos, reports, historical records, and even sensor information progressively entering the public domain. And then phase four is what they call the technological question. That is when humanity begins openly asking whether some observations represent technologies beyond publicly known aerospace capabilities. And of course, that leads to phase five, which is intelligence questioning. So what that means is that people then want to know, okay, if all of this is real, who constructed them, right? So that leads to phase six, which is the non-human intelligence presence. Human civilizations confront the possibility that intelligence does not begin and end with humanity, okay? And that is the fact that we're not alone in the universe, which leads to phase seven, civilization identification. At this stage, stage seven, all the files have already been out, all the footage, all the revelations of all the different non-terrestrials, right? And of course, perhaps even information on other civilizations that begin to become relevant and become a subject matter of public scrutiny. Okay, that is phase seven. So this is all happening in phases, guys. So, according to the Jupiter Command, the future alien race disclosure would classify civilizations not simply by appearance, but by according to planetary or stellar origin, dimensional density, biological or synthetic composition, propulsion technology, relationship with humanity, historical activity around the Earth, political alliances, non-interference status, contact authorization, and finally but not least, relationship with the Galactic Alliance. So, humanity has already received far more UFO, UAP documentations than many people have realized. We have now on record, and it has been reclosed, Project Blue Book, Air Intelligence Reports, Roswell investigation records, photographic archives, films and recordings, CIA materials, congressional hearings, ARO or AARO investigations, modern military UAP imagery, annual UAP reports, the new National Archive UAP collection, government records explicitly categorized under statutory language encompassing technologies of unknown origin and non-human intelligence. So in 2026, which is the year the disclosure is beginning to unfold, additional imagery, mission reports, and congregational reportings have and will continue to enter the public domain. So the greatest boundary has not yet been crossed publicly yet. Governments have acknowledged the phenomena. They have documented the objects. They have released some of the footage. They have created an infrastructure for releasing the records every 3 to 4 weeks. But what they have not publicly done yet was they haven't told humanity at large the truth that we have developed these technologies in secret for over 80 years, thus creating the breakaway civilizations. That is going to be the finality of the disclosure. Once they release those records, and it's all over the news, that there are these things called secret space programs, that's going to blow the lid. Everyone's going to want to know the truth. And why haven't we been using these technologies? Okay. They're going to want to know, where do these aliens come from? What civilizations do they represent? What relationships do they have with the earth? And that, my friends, when everyone in mass numbers begins to ask these questions, that would be the final disclosure phase. You see, guys, not how can I say this? It's not just about the revelation of UFOs and UAPs, okay? It's also about the disclosure of the exotic technologies. And it's also about the revelation of civilizations beyond the earth. So, my friends, this concludes today's Galactic Update briefing, coming to you from the Jupiter Command. And the Jupiter Command, and that's it. All right, end of transmission. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, evening, or night, depending on where you're at in the world. I do want to acknowledge some of you guys here, give some shout outs to some of the people in the house. Where am I? Oh, there I am. All right, I see that Jody Crocker is in the house. Peggy Baker, William Ryan. Holy shit. Thank you so much, brother, for that generous donation. Mr. Gerardo is in the house. Scott Lewis. Vicky Gray is in the house. Debbie Gender. Royce Toys is in the house. Vicky Gray, I've already mentioned her. The Real Mike is in the house. And last but not least, Rachel Plant is in the house. All right. Welcome, everyone else. Thank you guys so much for being here. So we do have about 10 minutes of Q&A. So I'm just going to take random questions. Again, Monday nights is going to be strictly 1 hour Q&A, Monday nights. So I will take just random questions. If you guys could give me a second, I do have to go tingle. Give me 1 minute. All this water hits the bladder. 1 second. I am back. All right, random questions. Nathan Taylor, thank you so much for the super chat. During the solar flash, will all electronic devices, phones, computers, etc., be destroyed? Yes. Yeah, the solar flash is like an EMP to all electrical gadgets. So it's not that they're going to be destroyed, they're just going to not function anymore. Once again, guys, I want to remind you guys that the last classes are going to be in October. I'm taking November off so that I could go on a spiritual journey for a whole month, just for classes. Of course, I'm still going to be broadcasting, but I am going to hold a special event on the 30th to set the intention for the next year to come. And that's only going to be $40. And if you guys could leave your intention, of course, if you're going to partake in the event, make sure you guys leave it in the comments. I'm going to have my team review the entire comments for all the intentions so that for the special intention meditation on the 30th of October, whoever's there, we're going to do it together for about 2 hours of just setting the intention for the collective as we close 2026 and begin 2027. And then for my birthday coming up on the 1st of November, for only 30 people, that's going to be limited to only a few, I'm going to be holding a special, in-depth presentation about the story of my life. I'm going to reveal more of myself. That's going to be also fascinating because I'm going to also go over a few chapters, and I'm going to be releasing on that day the story of Ishmael Perez, the cosmic origins of Ishmael Perez, from when I was a little lad to the present. The story of my life. All right. And then finally, but not least, the final date to access my special August 29th presentation next weekend is going to be Wednesday. So between now and Wednesday, guys, for only $60, I'm going to be doing a 2-hour online special revelation of cosmic history, going over several things that I've never shared before. And I'm also going to be reading 2 chapters of my unpublished book, The Autobiography of Ishmael Perez. All right. Now that I've mentioned that, let's go ahead and take Q&A. Thank you so much for the super chat. Ank Moy. Welcome, Ank Moy. Orvion is in the house. Hey, brother, hope everything is well. November is my month also. Nice. So you're also a Scorpio, huh? I got a big Kundalini from the 22nd to the 25th of December. So getting ready for that. Wow, that's amazing, brother. Thank you for sharing. Camera Panja is in the house. He says, why Enki and Enlil have been mentioned other way around in other sources like the Anunnaki Code? Because the entire Enuma Elish, all of those records pertaining to the corrupt Sumerian tablets were inverted by Enki's son Marduk. So everything was inverted. They made the bad guy look like the good guy and the good guy look like the bad guy. It's just unfortunate that within our community, people bought into that, okay? And that's why they have everything reversed. But no, Enki was the bad guy and Enlil Sus was the good guy. And then, even the book of creation, the book of Gilgamesh, the Enuma Elish, the epic of creation was all compromised. It was all corrupted and inverted. And then the second part of your question is, I guess that was it. Okay, continuing. The solar flash is more of an internal resonant match. That is correct. You don't need to go anywhere. You need to only align and resonate when you speak the fire letters of Anuhasi, vibration creates light. That is true. I thank you for sharing that. I wanted to share that with the rest of you. And this is coming from Galactic Jedi Laura Mon. Thank you for sharing that, sister. Hi, Ishmael. When is the solar flash? I don't know. I don't have a date. Just be ready. It's always best to be grounded and ready. Ishmael, what time on the 30th? Oh, yeah, for the intentional meditation. Let me give you guys the timing for that. So on the 30th, the collective intention is going to be from 6 p.m. Pacific time to 8 p.m. Pacific time. So this is where you guys get to send your intentions via the comments. I'm going to have my team collect those comments, and yeah, we're going to do this together. We're gonna, of course, set the intention for all of you, and most importantly, I'm going to read 2 chapters of my book that I am going to be releasing on that day. So that's going to be fascinating. All right, next question. Yes, this is definitely our last incarnation. Most definitely. Nathan Taylor, thank you so much for your super chat. He says, so since everything is going to break during the flash, what about food? Wouldn't the fridge break too? Well, you're thinking in terms of 3D. If we go to the 5D Earth, we're not going to need any more food. So don't think in terms of 3D. Refrigerators, food, that's only 3D. All right. Only the Earth Terrans that are going into the 4D Earth are going to still have a refrigerator and food, but not an ascended being. All right, next question from Orvion. He says, no, I am actually a Gemini brother. Okay, so you're born towards the later days of November, right? He says, but it's the 40th readiness from November to late December. Gotcha. Set my priorities straight before the Kundalini comes. There you go, brother. There you go. I just bought your book, The Secret Government, and I have our cosmic origin, says PNTY. Thank you, sister. Oh, and by the way, I am the author of those 2 amazing books behind me, The Secret Government, Invisible Architects, and of course, our cosmic origin. Hi, Ishmael. Which alien species has the highest percentage of positive beings? Ooh, there's too many of them. All right. All of the collectives that are operating from the 6th dimension and above are considered the purest of beings. So that could be multiple. It's not just one collective or one species, multiple species that are operating from 6th dimension and above. All right, one more question, and then I'm going to end the live with a short prayer. One more question. Why are archons and reptilians allowed to influence us so much, but the good alien beings are not as much? That's a good question. Well, because of the fact that the Enki Marduk branch of the Anunnaki took over the surface world 10,000 years ago. And so the positive ETs had to operate from behind the scenes, working with benevolent secret societies like the Essenes, the Celtics, the Druids, the Knights Templars, until now, the Earth Alliance. But now the tables are turning. Now the negative aliens have been arrested as we are preparing to go into the Golden Age. All right, let's end this with a quick prayer. If you guys could all settle in and take a few deep breaths to relax, we're going to end this with a prayer so that we could hold space for all of the people being affected by the wars, the blackouts. I hear that Indiana has been no electricity, no grid for Indiana for a whole week now, which is bad. Okay, so let's center ourselves, take a few deep breaths, inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. Once again. One last time. At this time, Mother, Father, God, we come before you through the power of the collective I am presence of all of us to hold space for all of those people being affected by the grid, by food shortages, by the wars, by the earthquakes, by the fires, and all other catastrophes. We put them in your hands at this time, Mother, Father, God. And we ask that you protect them, bring them peace. And then we also pray for the children that are still suffering. We pray for them so that they could be liberated at this time. We pray for disclosure. We pray for the solar flash. We want to transition into the new earth. And we pray to end the development of AI and data centers, at least in our timeline at this time. And we pray to end all wars. We say these things in the name of the firstborn in heaven, the great silver sun himself, Jesus the Christ. So be it. So be it. May the God force be with you all. I'd like to know when the global possibility remote. Whoa. One final super chat. You guys threw these super chats right as I was praying. Let's see. I'd like to know when the global currency reset and EBS start. Is it possible for remote viewers to determine the dates? I just want to know if it's possible by using remote viewing. What do you think? Well, if you are a remote viewer, give it a shot. And then tell us if you foresee when that's going to happen. But as of now, guys, I can't give any dates. I mean, I'm not even allowed to give any more White Hat Alliance updates. So Monday night, strictly going to be just Q&A. May the God force be with you all, and I'll see you guys Monday night for Q&A. Bye now.